The house on Luther Street always sat too still. It was a pale blue shotgun-style home in a crumbling neighborhood that the city pretended didn't exist. Grass poked through the cracks of the sidewalk and the porch sagged like it was tired of holding secrets. Inside lived 8-year-old Aliyah Thomas, her mother Tanisha, and, according to all known records, no one else. But Aliyah didn't blink when she told her second-grade teacher, Ms. Flores, "My daddy's not dead. He talks to me at night through the floorboards." Ms. Flores tried to smile. "You mean you dream about him?" Aliyah's big brown eyes stayed still. "No. He's there, just under the floor. I leave water for him." She motioned with her fingers. "In a blue cup." The teacher hesitated. These weren't the kinds of things you brushed off. A guidance counselor was called, then a social worker. 2 days later, a police officer knocked on the door of the Thomas home, asking to speak to Tanisha. Tanisha answered in a long robe, her face pale beneath her cocoa skin. Her eyes looked like they hadn't closed in a week. She told them her husband, Darnell Thomas, had died in a car accident 4 years ago. There had been a memorial, a closed casket. She had the certificate to prove it. "Then why is your daughter saying he's alive?" the officer asked. Tanisha's hand tightened around the door frame. "Because she misses her daddy," she snapped, then softened. "She's a child. She's confused." But Aliyah wasn't confused. Later that same night, she knelt by the floor near the hallway closet. A section of the wooden boards was slightly warped, just enough that a small child's ear could press against it. "Daddy?" she whispered. A long silence, then a sound, slow scratching, like a fingernail dragging against wood. "See?" she whispered to herself. "He's still here." It wasn't the first time someone in that neighborhood had said something unbelievable. But this time, something stuck. Officer Reyes, the one assigned to the child welfare visit, filed the report, but couldn't shake the image of Aliyah's still, focused eyes. She wasn't dreaming. She was remembering. Within 48 hours, the story reached Detective Michelle Harper, a black woman who had worked child endangerment cases for over a decade. She'd seen delusions, yes. But she'd also seen kids carry truth that adults buried in denial. So she drove to Luther Street. Tanisha greeted her coldly. "She's a child. She talks to herself. Why are you all harassing us?" Harper's tone was calm but firm. "Ma'am, this is just a welfare check. I'd like to speak to your daughter." Inside, the house smelled faintly of bleach. Harper noticed how new the floorboards looked in the hallway, sanded, stained, but only in one patch. The rest of the wood was worn down by time. Aliyah came out, small and quiet, clutching her stuffed bunny. "Hi," Harper said gently. "Do you still talk to your daddy?" Aliyah nodded. "He's right there," she said, pointing, under the floor. Harper's heart slowed. "Has anyone dug?" Tanisha scoffed from the kitchen. "No one believes me," Aliyah whispered. Harper glanced at the warped boards. Something was wrong. She could feel it. She pulled out her phone. "Send a team. I think we're going to need ground-penetrating radar." "Detective." Harper stood still in the narrow hallway, her eyes glued to the floorboards where Aliyah had pointed. The child sat beside her on the floor, small and serious, as if she understood the gravity of what she'd just said. Harper had dealt with countless children making claims, but this wasn't a game. Aliyah didn't have the look of someone playing pretend. She had the look of someone carrying the weight of a terrible truth. Outside, a dull wind stirred, the dry leaves across the porch. Inside, it was dead quiet. No TV, no music, just that bleach-laced stillness and a tension so tight it could snap a neck. "Has anyone ever come to check this?" Harper asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Aliyah shook her head. "Mama says I'm making stuff up, but I hear him. At night, I come here and I listen." Harper looked at the boards again. The grain pattern didn't match the rest of the floor. Someone had replaced them, but sloppily. A quick cover-up, a bandage over a wound that refused to close. "I left him a sandwich once," Aliyah whispered. "Through the crack. Mama threw it away when she found out." "Did he talk back?" Harper asked. Aliyah hesitated. Not words, just scratching, sometimes crying. "He sounds hurt." The detective's stomach turned. She stood slowly, eyeing the hallway's proportions, noting how the closet's baseboard seemed thicker, extended, almost like it had been reconstructed. Tanisha's voice rang out from the kitchen. "Are we done here? I have work in the morning." Harper didn't respond. She walked into the living room, scanned the space. No family photos on the walls, no pictures of Darnell. It was as if he'd been erased. "Did your husband have any enemies?" Harper asked casually. Tanisha appeared in the doorway, her robe now fully tied, face tight. "You mean before he died in that crash?" "No. And he didn't have enemies. He was a family man." "Where was the crash?" Tanisha blinked. "What?" "Where was the crash reported?" "Out on Highway 6. Why are you asking me this?" "I already told the other officer. It was 4 years ago." Harper's face stayed neutral. "I'll just check the official report to confirm." Tanisha's eyes narrowed. She didn't respond, but something behind her expression, fear maybe, flickered. By the time Harper left the house, the sun had begun to drop behind the roofs of the decaying neighborhood. She sat in her car and called it in. "There's no record of a Darnell Thomas dying in any car accident on Highway 6, or anywhere in the state. Nothing matches." Harper stared at the house through her windshield. "Get forensics out here tomorrow morning. Full equipment. I want the floorboards pulled." Back inside, Tanisha locked the door with shaking fingers. She turned to look at Alaya, who sat on the stairs in silence. "You said something, didn't you?" Alaya said nothing. Tanisha's eyes grew hard. "You think you're helping him? There's nothing left down there." But as the house settled into its usual haunted quiet, the hallway creaked, and then softly came the scratch, a long, dragging scratch, and Alaya smiled. "Detective." Harper returned at dawn. A black unmarked SUV rolled up behind her with 2 forensic techs and a uniformed officer. They wore no-nonsense expressions, the kind that came from years of unearthing secrets people had tried to bury. Harper briefed them quickly. "Small child claims her father is under the floor. Records show no death certificate, no accident, and no trace of him since 2021. Mother's story doesn't add up." The house on Luther Street sat in eerie silence. No signs of life inside, not even the sound of a kettle or morning news. Harper knocked once, then twice. No answer. She motioned to Officer Grant. "Break it!" The door cracked open with a loud snap, and Harper entered first, gun drawn. Not because she expected violence, but because the air felt heavy with something close to it. Police. "Search warrant in progress. We're not here to hurt you, just here for the truth." Tanisha was in the kitchen, hands braced on the table, eyes glassy. "Please," she whispered, "please don't do this in front of my daughter." Alaya stood. Behind her, holding her bunny, unfazed. "We're doing this because of your daughter," Harper said gently. The forensics team got to work. They started in the hallway, prying up the warped boards with crowbars, carefully lifting each plank. To preserve evidence, it didn't take long. Within minutes, the first tech gagged. "Oh my God!" Harper stepped forward and peered into the space beneath the floor. There, in a shallow cavity barely 3 feet deep, was a mass of dark cloth and bone. A body, partially mummified, its face unrecognizable, but the gold wedding band still. Shimmered under a thin layer of dust, they found a wallet in the coat pocket. "ID Darnell Thomas." No one spoke for several minutes. Tanisha had collapsed to the floor, shaking. I didn't mean for it to go that far." Harper cuffed her in silence. "Tell me what happened," she said, her voice low. "Controlled." Tanisha sobbed into her knees. He was going to leave me. He said he wanted to take Alaya and go. Said I was unstable, that I needed help. I begged him. We fought. He shoved me and I grabbed the hammer." Harper's jaw clenched. "I panicked," Tanisha whispered. "I buried him under the floor because I thought if I could just make it through one day without hearing him say he wanted to leave, I could hold on. Just one day. And then it turned into weeks. Then years." Alaya stood nearby, watching. Her mother cry. "You hurt Daddy," she said softly. Tanisha looked up, eyes hollow. "I'm sorry. Baby, I'm so sorry." But Alaya didn't move toward her. She turned instead to Harper and said, "I told you he was still here. Harper knelt beside her. You were very brave, Alaya. You told the truth when no one else would. Outside, sirens began to grow louder. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains as Tanisha Thomas was escorted out in handcuffs. Inside, the hallway remained open, boards ripped away, air thick with dust and something more sorrowful, something ancient. The silence left behind was not empty. It was reverent. The news spread through Luther Street like smoke from a slow-burning fire. By mid-morning, the Blue House was wrapped in yellow police tape, and a growing crowd of neighbors stood across the street murmuring to one another in disbelief. Some clutched Bibles, others shook their heads and muttered, I always knew something wasn't right in that house. Inside, Detective Harper remained with Alaya as the forensics team carefully cataloged every item pulled from the cavity. Under the floor, a small notebook, a broken wristwatch, Darnell's wallet, a faded photo of Alaya tucked behind his driver's license. Harper crouched beside the child who was still seated calmly near the closet, her bunny clutched tight. You okay? Harper asked. Alaya nodded, but didn't speak. Her eyes were locked on the floor, on the place where her daddy had been sleeping, forgotten, under their feet. I used to dream about him, she whispered finally, but it wasn't really dreaming. I knew he was there. Harper put a hand gently on her back. How long have you been hearing the sounds? Since I was 5, Alaya said. Sometimes it was scratching, sometimes crying, and sometimes singing. Your mama never heard it. She heard. She just said it was the pipes, or my imagination. Harper's heart ached. This girl had lived with the truth buried inches beneath her, and she had carried it, known it, longer than most adults could stomach. Officer Grant approached with an evidence bag. You'll want to see this. Inside was a recording device, a cheap voice-activated digital recorder, the kind you could buy at any gas station convenience store. It had been hidden beneath the insulation, tucked into a corner of the crawl space. Harper played it. Static. Then, a faint voice. I know you can hear me, baby. I know she won't let me out. But I'm here. Daddy's here. Then silence. Then crying. Then scratching. Harper shut it off. My God, she murmured. He tried to reach her, even after he died. No, Alaya whispered. He wasn't dead. Not at first. He talked for a long time. He cried a lot, but he stopped. About 2 years ago. Harper's breath caught. 2 years. That meant Darnell hadn't died instantly. He had lived, trapped, wounded, buried beneath the floor. Long enough to beg. Long enough to record a message for his daughter, Tanisha. Hadn't just killed him. She'd silenced him slowly. Outside, a social worker had arrived to take Alaya to temporary care. Harper walked her out gently, one hand resting protectively on her shoulder. The little girl paused at the edge of the porch and turned back to look at the house. Will the house miss him? She asked. Harper blinked. What do you mean? It's been holding him a long time. The house didn't want to let go. Harper followed her gaze. The sagging porch, the crooked windows, the boards still cracked open like a wound. Maybe, she said softly, but sometimes even houses have to let go of their ghosts. Alaya nodded, solemn as an old soul. Then she climbed into the car and rode away, stuffed Bunny in her lap, staring forward with the calm of someone who had told the world a secret it didn't want to hear, and made it listen. Back inside, Harper stood alone in the silence. It no longer felt haunted. It felt relieved. 2 weeks later, the house on Luther Street stood empty. Boards nailed across the windows. A faded red notice posted to the front door. Property under investigation. No trespassing. The neighbors still crossed the street to avoid its shadow. But inside it was quiet in a different way. Like a secret finally told, Alaya Thomas now lived with her Aunt Patrice, miles across town in a clean apartment near the river. She had her own room, her own bed, and no more sounds from under the floor. But some nights, she still woke up and listened, out of habit more than hope. Aunt Patrice kept her busy. Therapy twice a week, new school, drawing classes at the community center. Alaya barely spoke at first. But when she did, it was always with purpose. In therapy, she surprised the counselor. I don't hate my mama, she said one day. coloring in shades of brown and gray. But I think she broke something. In her, and in me, and in the house. You think houses can break? The counselor asked gently. Alaya nodded. I think they remember things, just like people do. That was when her drawings began to change. Less of the dark floorboards, more of wide-open fields, sunlight, bridges, and always a little girl standing tall, holding a bunny and facing forward. Detective Harper kept in touch. She visited once, not as a cop, but as a promise keeper. I told you I'd make sure the truth came out, she said, sitting across from Alaya on the porch of Patrice's apartment. Alaya nodded. Thank you. I heard you've been drawing? Alaya showed her one. It was a picture of a big building with kids inside, smiling, eating, laughing. On the front of the building was a name, the Darnell Center. I'm gonna make a place, Alaya said. For kids like me. Kids who know things, but nobody listens. I'm gonna listen to them. Harper felt her throat tighten. That's beautiful, Alaya. The little girl met her eyes. If someone had listened sooner, maybe he wouldn't have died. Harper didn't have a reply. There wasn't one. As Harper drove away, she looked in the rearview mirror. Alaya stood on the steps, hand raised, not waving goodbye but waving forward. A sign, a promise, a witness to pain. And now, the beginning of healing. The story of Alaya Thomas began with a whisper and ended with a truth the world couldn't ignore. But how many children are still speaking from under the floorboards of silence? Don't miss what comes next. Subscribe to follow more gripping, emotional, and powerful true fiction stories like this one, crafted with heart, memory, and voice. Hit subscribe now and never miss a story that demands to be heard.